When I wasn't invited to my old mentor's company launch, I drove by and saw everyone in the courtyard. I called. He answered and said, "Why would we invite you? Nobody wants you here. You always complicate things." His wife said loud, "This company isn't for broken minds like you." I said, "Say less." For weeks later, I pulled the plug. Now they're begging, "Please, fix this. We didn't mean it." You ever have a moment that just punches the air out of your lungs? That was me the day I drove past Victor's house and realized every single person from our old company was there, except me. My name's Adrian. I'm 36. I live in Seattle, and I've been a systems engineer for over a decade. I used to work for this mid-sized tech firm called Vertinex, the kind that looked sleek on paper but ran on duct tape logic underneath. Victor, my former mentor, was the CTO. We weren't best friends or anything, but I was his go-to guy for back-end fires. He called me the cleaner once. I should have known that was code for the guy we'll forget the minute the smoke clears. That afternoon, I wasn't even near Victor's place on purpose. I just dropped off a package for my sister and was circling back through the neighborhood when I noticed the setup. Catered food, those fold-out rental tables, valet attendants in red vests. I slowed the car, then stopped. I spotted a few familiar faces from Vertinex in the crowd. One of them, Paige, was holding a champagne flute and laughing with her head tilted back like this was a scene out of some startup launch video. Then I saw the banner, Next Vision launch party. Next Vision. Victor's new company. The one he'd supposedly been building quietly over the past year. The one he told me was still in stealth mode and too early for formal invites. Apparently, it wasn't too early anymore. I sat in the car for a full minute, just gripping the steering wheel. Then, against every bit of my better judgment, I called him. He picked up on the third ring. "Adrian," he answered, voice clipped. There was party noise behind him. Music, clinking glasses. "Hey," I said, trying to sound normal. "Didn't realize today was the launch. Congrats." There was a pause. I imagined him stepping away from the crowd. "Yeah, thanks. I was just driving through and saw the setup. Looks like a solid turnout." Another pause. Then, flatly, "You weren't invited." It wasn't even a question. I swallowed. "Right. I figured. Just thought maybe." "Why would we invite you?" he said, sharp now. "You always complicate things. You don't know how to keep your mouth shut. This is a clean slate." We didn't need any friction. In the background, I heard a woman laugh. Then a voice, Serena, his wife, said, loud and clear, "We don't need broken minds like his bringing down the mood." Broken minds. That landed harder than it should have. She'd always been polite to me at company dinners. Once, she even asked me for recommendations on hiring junior engineers. Now I was some defect. A mental liability. I didn't respond. Didn't give them the satisfaction of a reaction. I just ended the call. For a few seconds, I stared at my own reflection in the windshield. Blank expression. Tight jaw. Then I pulled out my phone and sent Victor one message. "Understood. I won't forget. Enjoy the silence while it lasts." And that was it. No tantrum. No confrontation. Just silence. The same silence I'd given them every time I stayed late fixing systems they'd broken. Every weekend I spent patching security holes no one noticed. Every deployment I saved by rewriting code last minute. They didn't remember any of that. But they would remember this. Eventually. Back at my apartment that night, I couldn't sleep. My phone was face down on the nightstand, but I kept looking at it anyway, like maybe Victor would realize how low he'd sunk and text an apology. He didn't. I stared at the ceiling, arms folded behind my head, and let it all wash over me. Not just the party. Not just the rock-hard insult from Serena. Everything. The years I spent being the guy in the background, the shadow in the corner who made sure the light stayed on, the servers didn't crash, the data didn't leak. I was the guy who knew the system better than anyone. Not because someone trained me. Because I built most of it from scratch. I wasn't flashy. I didn't do well in board meetings. I didn't sugarcoat things or dance around problems. That made me a liability in Victor's eyes. But when the servers got hit by ransomware 2 years ago, who cleaned it up? Me. He stood in the conference room the next day, basking in the praise from our clueless CEO, getting quoted in Tech Circle Weekly for heroic incident handling. Meanwhile, I was still cleaning corrupted logs at 3 a.m., alone in the office, eating stale granola bars from the break room. And you know what I told myself? It's okay. He needs the spotlight. I just want the system to run. Pathetic. I rolled over and grabbed my laptop. Logged into the admin panel. The dashboard flickered to life. Everything's still running. Everything's still humming because of me. The automations I'd written were elegant. Invisible. They caught bugs before anyone saw them. Restarted queue systems. Patched memory leaks. Adjusted server loads based on real-time data, not preset schedules. None of it was documented in the official manual. It didn't need to be. Everyone just knew. Adrian's got it. He always has it. Well, not anymore. I started flipping switches. Nothing catastrophic. Not yet. Just small things. Turning off a couple of alert triggers. Suspending a task that monitored the mailer queue. Disabling an endpoint checker I'd rigged to reboot integrations when they failed. I didn't delete anything. I just let it sit. Let them see what I've been shielding them from. By the end of the week, I was already getting pings from some old teammates, subtle ones. Hey, Adrian, you know if something's up with the analytics dashboard? Data's not loading right. Quick question, were you the one who handled the calendar sync fallback? I didn't reply. I didn't even open the messages. At first, it was just confusion. A delay here, a missing report there. Nothing that couldn't be explained away. But I knew what was coming. See, when you build the skeleton of a system, you also know where the tendons are, where the soft spots are hiding behind shiny surfaces. I wasn't sabotaging anything. I was just stepping back. For the first time in years, I let the house burn without grabbing a hose. And it felt good. Not out of revenge. Out of clarity. They wanted a clean slate without me? Fine. Let them see how clean it stays without the guy who kept the floorboards from collapsing. I shut the laptop. Then I shut my eyes. And for the first time in a long time, I actually slept. The breakdown started like all disasters do, quietly. By midweek, the dashboard for internal project tracking had stopped updating. I knew exactly why. That particular cron job was one I'd kept running through a private script outside the company scheduler. It wasn't official. It wasn't documented. But it was the only reason the metrics stayed live during API outages. Someone finally noticed. Metrics page is acting weird. Anyone else seeing this? That came from Olivia, one of the newer data analysts, in the Slack channel I still had muted. No one replied for a while. Then a confused message from the CTO, Greg, Victor's handpicked replacement. Looking into it. Might be a misfire in the polling interval. No, Greg. It was me. You just didn't know it yet. By the end of the day, a few more dominoes wobbled. Backups failed. Not permanently, just enough to throw errors. Email routing got wonky. Meeting invites duplicated or vanished. The calendar integration with internal servers? That one was held together by a webhook I personally built during a company hackathon no one cared about. Now it was gone. Victor called me for the first time in months. 3 times in 2 days. No voicemail the first time. Then the second one was practically a PR draft. Hey, Adrian, just wanted to check in. Hope everything's good on your end. We've had a couple hiccups here, probably just transition growing pains. No big deal. Would love to catch up when you have time. I let it sit. The third time, he sounded more cautious. If there's anything unresolved between us, I'd really like to talk about it. This launch has been stressful for everyone, and I think it's important we all support each other right now. Support. That word hit me in the gut. I'd spent 5 years supporting him. Supporting the team. Supporting a structure built on my unpaid weekends and duct-taped fixes. And the one time I needed someone to have my back, they threw a party and called me broken. No, Victor. I don't owe you my time. Or my support. Other people started reaching out, some of them cautiously curious, others irritated. One ex-colleague messaged, "Are you behind the system outages?" I typed back. Not my system anymore. That was it. And still, I watched. I had tabs open for their website uptime. I watched GitHub commits go from sleek and steady to frantic and patched. I saw the team's LinkedIn activity spike. Random junior developers suddenly open to work. Posts about legacy architecture and technical transitions. Then it happened. The CTO, Greg, put out a post on LinkedIn. Vague, polished, and trembling at the edges. Seeking experts with deep knowledge of complex legacy stacks. We're rebuilding critical infrastructure and need high-level consultants familiar with scalable systems under pressure. Translation. The engine's on fire and we don't know where the manual is. I sat back and scrolled through the comments. A few old faces tagged me. One of them even DM'd, "Hey, they're obviously talking about you." Yeah, I know. I closed my browser and leaned back in my chair. Let them chase ghosts. Let them retrace the breadcrumbs I left behind. Me? I was already gone, and I didn't plan on coming back. I wasn't hiding. I still went to events. Still showed up at conferences and mixers. I just stopped explaining myself to people who didn't care. So when I spotted Serena, Victor's wife, across the floor at the Cascade Dev Summit, I didn't flinch. I figured she'd pretend not to see me. She wasn't the type to make a scene. I was wrong. She cornered me by the coffee bar like we were old friends. Like she hadn't called me a broken mind less than 2 weeks ago. "Adrian," she said, clutching her latte with both hands, that performative concern already painted across her face. "I've been hoping I'd run into you." I didn't answer right away. Just looked at her and raised an eyebrow. She sighed, like I was making this harder than it needed to be. "Look, I know things were tense, but Victor's been under so much pressure. You know how he gets. Stressed. Impulsive." She stepped closer. "He never meant to hurt you. He's just overwhelmed. This launch, it's taken a toll. On all of us." I took a sip of my coffee, slow and unbothered. Is that why you told me I complicate everything? I asked. She hesitated. People say things when they're anxious, she tried. You've always been brilliant, Adrian. But you know how the team struggled with your intensity and your honesty. There it was. The same excuse wrapped in flattery. You mean the man who told me no one wanted me around? I said, cutting through her performance like a knife through silk. She blinked. Her face cracked just slightly. This isn't the place to have this conversation, she whispered. Agreed, I replied, stepping past her. What neither of us noticed was the man standing 5 feet away, waiting for his drink, overhearing the entire exchange. He wasn't with Victor's team. I could tell just by his look. Clean flannel, beat-up boots, and the kind of curious eyes that only engineers have when they see a system under pressure. I walked away. Didn't say another word. Later that night, I got a LinkedIn message from him. Saw what happened today. If you're the guy I think you are, we should talk. I run a startup in the diagnostics space. We could use someone who's been through fire. Serena sent a follow-up email the next morning. Subject, let's reset. Body, we'd like to offer compensation for any support you've given in the past. Victor is open to discussing a consulting role. Let's not let pride get in the way. I didn't even open it. I archived the message and went back to reading the diagnostic startup's architecture overview. Some doors don't deserve to be knocked on again. The first public complaint came in on a Tuesday morning. A client posted on a tech forum, anyone else having major downtime issues with NextVision's calendar API? Been 3 days. Support hasn't responded. I bookmarked it. By Wednesday, the thread had exploded with responses. Other users chimed in, buggy syncs, corrupted metadata, broken integrations with third-party tools. Most of it was stuff I'd warned Victor about during early builds. Stuff I personally patched, then quietly maintained from the shadows. Now that I wasn't there, it was showing. People weren't angry yet, just annoyed. But I knew how quickly that could turn. On Thursday, Victor called a full company-wide Zoom meeting. Someone on the inside leaked a recording to an old Slack channel we used to joke around in. I got the file emailed to me anonymously. No subject. Just a video file named legacy_wounds.mp4. I clicked it open out of curiosity. Victor stood in front of a sleek branded backdrop, wearing his usual Navy sport coat, trying to smile like the ship wasn't sinking. I want to address some of the concerns being raised, he said, his tone rehearsed. There have been unexpected delays, yes, but we're making strides to isolate the root causes. Many of these issues stem from legacy architecture. Systems that, frankly, weren't scalable or well documented. That part hit like a slap. Legacy architecture. That was me. He didn't say my name, but everyone knew who wrote those systems. Who built those foundations. The subtext was clear. Blame the guy who's not here to defend himself. And the worst part? Some people nodded along. I watched a few familiar faces, junior devs I had mentored, quietly agree in the chat. Yeah, we need to modernize. Honestly, I never understood that code base. I closed the video. If that was how Victor wanted to play it, so be it. Later that day, my friend Mira, who worked at a competitor, sent me a message. He's in deep. I heard through back channels that Victor's exploring buyout options. Might dump the company just to avoid liability. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a fresh browser tab. Logged into an old Reddit account I hadn't touched in years. Started typing. Let me tell you about a company that depended on a system it never understood. Let me tell you how they stripped it down, dismissed the architect, then blamed the decay on the bones they kept picking clean. Let me tell you what happens when you ignore the only guy who knew where the wires ran. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even revenge. It was documentation. Honest, blunt, and technically accurate. I posted it anonymously. It went viral in under 24 hours. By Friday, industry blogs were quoting lines from it. The invisible engineer who held it together. A post-mortem in real time. Victor didn't respond publicly, but NextVision's job board quietly added a new listing. Emergency Systems Reliability Consultant. Must have experience with undocumented codebases and high-pressure tree-off. And just like that, they were waving white flags without even knowing where the battle lines had been drawn. Let them scramble. Let them throw money at strangers to fix what they never respected in the first place. I didn't need a spotlight. I already had the last word. The email came late on a Sunday night. Subject line, let's fix this. It was from Victor, his name glowing in bold in my inbox like a ghost that refused to stay buried. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit there while I microwaved leftovers and queued up a video about distributed caching systems. Normal stuff. Mundane, safe stuff. But that subject line buzzed at the back of my head like a mosquito in a dark room. Eventually, curiosity won. The message was long. Surprisingly emotional. Words like misunderstanding, mistakes were made, and we miss your presence were scattered throughout like desperate confetti. Then came the real hook. We'd like to bring you on as a consultant. Full autonomy. Significant compensation. You'd have complete control over system structure and ops. No red tape. Just you, doing what you do best. He even included a number. It was a big one. For a moment, just a moment, I felt the old pull. The temptation to clean up one last mess. To rewrite history through clean code and quiet victories. But I remembered the phone call. Why would we invite you? You always complicate things. I remembered Serena's voice in the background. We don't need broken minds like his. And most of all, I remembered how it felt to walk away. So I hit reply. Typed just 2 lines. Too late. You can fix it the way you left me. Alone. Then I hit send. No second draft. No rereading. An hour later, I got a voicemail from Serena. I didn't answer, but I listened. Her voice cracked halfway through. Not rage this time. Not smugness. Just panic. And something dangerously close to regret. Adrian, please. I didn't mean what I said. Victor is falling apart. We didn't know. We thought you'd always be there. Please call me back. I saved it. Dropped the audio file into a folder on my desktop labeled regret/. Then I grabbed my coat and left. The air was cool. The streets were mostly empty. I walked without a destination until I ended up at the little park near my apartment. The one with the crooked benches and peeling playground paint. I sat, just breathing. Across the grass, a kid and his dad were trying to fix a kite. It had clearly been mangled. Bent frame, torn paper, tail dragging in the dirt. The kid held it up, duct tape wrapped messily around the center. It's gonna fly, he said. His dad smiled and gave him a thumbs up. It always does eventually. I watched as the kid took off across the grass, dragging the wounded kite behind him. It bounced, snagged, flailed, and for a split second, caught the wind. I smiled. Just a little. Some things break and stay broken. Some things don't. But either way, I wasn't going back to catch their kite. They let it crash. They can fix it on their own. A week later, I found myself at a tech mixer downtown. It was hosted by that startup CEO who'd messaged me after the Serena incident. His name was Nolan, a 30-something with sharp eyes and a quick handshake. I figured I'd stay for 30 minutes, maybe have a drink, then slip out before the buzz turned into job offers I wasn't sure I wanted. Instead, I stayed the whole night. The venue was modest, concrete floors, exposed beams, the kind of place that smelled like ambition and burnt coffee. A few dozen people milled about, swapping startup war stories and laughing too loud at inside jokes. But it wasn't the usual corporate posturing I'd grown used to. There was something looser here. Less polished. More real. Nolan found me near the drink table. Glad you came, he said, clinking his glass gently against mine. I almost didn't, I admitted. Figured you'd regret inviting a guy with a ghost trail of crashed calendars and broken APIs. He grinned. On the contrary, I wanted to meet the man who wrote a Reddit post that broke my product team into 2 camps, terrified and inspired. That got a chuckle out of me. Wasn't meant to go viral. Best things never are, he said. Then leaned in, voice quieter. What you built over there? What fell apart without you? That's not something you can fake. Anyone who's carried a system on their back knows that story. We stood in silence for a second, watching a few younger devs animatedly debate the merits of serverless architecture across the room. Then Nolan asked, "So, what's your next move?" I shrugged. Haven't decided yet. For now, just enjoying the peace. He nodded like he understood, then handed me a card. When you're ready. We could use someone who knows how to build under pressure. I pocketed it, not saying yes or no. Later in the evening, as I was chatting with a small circle about distributed failovers, someone joined the group and did a visible double take. Adrian. I looked up. It was Leslie, a former front-end engineer from Victor's team. She looked tired but sharper, like someone who'd stopped pretending everything was okay. Didn't expect to see you here, she said, clearly surprised. Same, I replied calm. She hesitated. So, is it true? The stuff people are saying? That you let it fall apart on purpose? I tilted my head slightly. Does it matter? She blinked. I guess not. I gave a small smile. Then let people think what they want. Her eyes narrowed thoughtfully, but she didn't press. After she wandered off, Nolan rejoined me. Friend of yours? Used to be. He nodded slowly. Well, whatever happened back there, it doesn't follow you here. I took a sip of my drink. I know. And for the first time in years, I talked about my work without hedging. Without worrying if someone was going to spin it into politics or packaging. I spoke like a builder, a problem solver. And people listened. Not to Victor's name. Not to my title. To me. Rumors could float. But for once, I stood on solid ground. It was a Wednesday afternoon when the legal email landed in my inbox. Subject, cease and desist. Alleged sabotage of Next Vision infrastructure. The sender? A corporate attorney representing Victor's company. I leaned back in my chair, let out a slow, quiet breath, and read through the whole thing. It was formal, wordy, full of posturing. They were accusing me, without using my name directly, of interference with internal operational assets, intentional disruption of infrastructure, and breach of intellectual confidence. What they didn't say outright was even clearer. We're losing, and we need someone to blame. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to my lawyer instead. Her reply came half an hour later. You're clean. They're flailing. Let them try. And that was that. I sat there for a moment, staring at the message. It should have made me angry. Should have lit something inside me. But all I felt was a kind of tired clarity. Victor still didn't understand. I didn't bring his company down. He did. I just stopped holding it up. On a whim, I opened an old systems dashboard, one I hadn't touched in months. Some of the infrastructure still ran off old security keys, lazily rehashed from my time. They hadn't changed them. Sloppy. The interface loaded with a soft click. Cameras. Internal feeds. Not many. Just 2 or 3 pointed toward the main office floor and a hallway. I had set them up years ago during a security sweep, tucked away in a forgotten repo, never decommissioned. And there he was. Victor. Pacing. He was on the phone, yelling, wild gestures, one hand to his temple. Serena stood behind him, arms crossed, her expression brittle. At one point she stepped forward, trying to calm him. He turned and snapped something, sharp enough that her shoulders flinched. I watched as he spiraled, still blaming, still performing, still trying to claw control back from something he'd never really understood. That was all I needed to see. I closed the dashboard, opened the console. rm/rf/keys/old_auth_tokens. rm/rf/local_caches/vid_snapshot. Clear cookies. I wiped the traces. No access. No footprints. Nothing left to connect me. Not even a shadow. I shut the laptop, exhaled, and leaned back. Outside my window, the late afternoon sun broke through the clouds, streaking across the buildings like a quiet exit sign. Victor had spent years trying to rewrite the story of who I was. The liability. The broken mind. The problem behind the curtain. Let him try. Let him throw lawsuits at smoke. I hadn't sabotaged a thing. I had just walked away. And for a man like Victor, that was the one failure he'd never be able to fix. It was quiet in my apartment. Not the kind of silence that feels heavy or lonely, just still, clean, like a room after it's been aired out. I sat at my desk that morning, sipping coffee and staring at my resume. It had been years since I'd even looked at it. I added a few lines, updated some wording, then paused and smirked. Infrastructure architect, critical systems. Built and maintained fail-safe automation across multiple environments. Resigned without notice. Company folded in 6 months. I deleted that last line. Funny, but not professional. Still, it felt good to think it. The notification buzzed gently on my phone, a new email. Subject, thank you. I opened it. It was from a new client Nolan had referred, someone I'd never met, but who had heard about me through someone who knows systems under stress. Just a short note, thanking me for solving an authentication loop they'd been stuck on for 2 weeks. No fanfare, no drama, just appreciation. I let the email sit open while I made breakfast. Eggs, toast, real butter this time. I wasn't rushing anymore. No panic patching someone else's disaster before my first bite. No Slack notifications at midnight begging me to fix something I didn't break. My phone buzzed again during lunch. Group chat with a few friends from the conference. One of them linked to an industry blog article. Next vision under regulatory audit following internal systems breakdown. Victor's company. Again. I clicked through. Apparently, investors had started asking hard questions about data integrity. The bugs that had been brushed off as temporary were being investigated. Some users had lost access to files entirely. One vendor filed a formal complaint for breach of SLA. I scrolled down to the comment section. Some anonymous insider posted, they burned the wrong bridge. The only guy who could have saved them was the one they let drown. I closed the browser. That night, I had dinner with a few old friends from my college days. We talked shop for a bit, what languages we loved, which ones we'd buried, which ones deserved a second chance. Someone mentioned a new company launching in Portland. Said they needed a lead architect who could start clean, no legacy mess to fix. You'd love it, one of them said. I didn't commit, but I listened. After dessert, we raised our glasses. Someone toasted to new starts, someone else to quiet exits. When it got to me, I thought for a second and said, may the systems never forget who kept them breathing. They laughed. I meant it. Because now, I wasn't a ghost in the machine. I was just Adrian. Free. Detached. And finally, remembered.